When Marcus Chen saw 95 Harley-Davidsons roll into his crumbling garage at dawn, engines thundering like a war convoy, he thought his life was over. I'm telling you this story because what happened next proves that sometimes the most dangerous situations lead to the most profound transformations. The night before, Marcus had done something no mechanic should ever do. He'd touched the daughter of a Demon Rider's vice president without permission. Her custom wheelchair, built by the best engineers money could buy, was supposed to be untouchable. But Marcus had seen something they'd all missed, something that made him gamble everything. Now, as leather-clad bikers surrounded his San Diego shop, their faces hidden behind dark sunglasses, their club president stepping forward with clenched fists, Marcus realized he'd either performed a miracle or signed his own death warrant. 14 hours earlier, Marcus Chen had made a decision that would change everything. But right now, standing in his garage at 6:47 a.m., all he could think about was survival. The rumble started low, like distant thunder rolling across the California coast, then grew into something that shook the windows of his small shop. One Harley, then 5, then 20, then so many he stopped counting. Marcus's hands trembled as he gripped the wrench he'd been holding since he heard the first engine. Oil stained his fingers, ground into the creases of his palms from a night spent working until his body begged him to stop. He was 34 years old, and he'd faced danger before, in Iraq, firefights in Fallujah. But this was different. These weren't enemy combatants. This was a brotherhood he'd challenged, a father he'd contradicted, a disabled girl he'd touched without explicit permission. The bikes circled his shop like wolves surrounding wounded prey. Chrome glinted in the early morning sun. Leather vests bore patches that told stories of loyalty, violence, and unbreakable bonds. Leading them all was a man known only as Blade. 6'3" of controlled fury, his salt and pepper beard framing a face that revealed nothing behind dark aviator sunglasses. Marcus watched through the cracked window of his garage door as Blade dismounted his bike with the deliberate movements of someone who'd made this walk before. How'd I get here? The question screamed through Marcus's mind as his heart hammered against his ribs. The answer lay in a single moment of truth 14 hours earlier. A moment when he'd seen something everyone else had missed. A moment when he'd chosen compassion over fear. To understand what happened, you have to understand Marcus Chen. Chen Auto Repair sat on the forgotten edge of San Diego, where the industrial district crept close and the rent was cheap because nobody wanted to be there. The building looked like it was held together by hope and duct tape. But if you looked closer, you'd see something else. Marcus's tools, worn as they were, sat in perfect order. Every wrench in its place, every socket organized by size. He'd learned precision in the Marines. 8 years as a vehicle mechanic with the 1st Marine Division, deployed twice to Iraq, where he'd kept Humvees running through sandstorms and combat conditions. His platoon used to joke that Marcus could hear an engine problem before it happened, could feel a misalignment in his bones. Mechanics keep Marines alive, their gunny had told them. Every bolt you tighten, every system you check, that's someone's kid coming home. Marcus had taken that seriously, maybe too seriously. His ex-wife used to say he cared more about machines than people. She wasn't entirely wrong. Marcus understood machines. They made sense. They followed rules. People were messy, eh? That Thursday morning, the day before 95 bikers would surround his shop, Marcus was doing what he did most mornings, barely surviving. Past due rent notices sat on his desk, their red stamps screaming final notice. The limp from his left leg, courtesy of an IED that had ended his Marine career, made him move slower than he used to. Above his workbench, pinned to the wall, was a single photograph. 5 Marines in desert camouflage, arms around each other, squinting against the Iraqi sun. Marcus was on the left, younger, both legs working properly. 3 of those men hadn't made it home. The rumble announced them before Marcus saw anything. One bike. But what a bike. The Harley that pulled up was a custom build, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. Chrome so polished it looked liquid. Then the rider dismounted, and Marcus's survival instincts started screaming. The man was massive, 6'3", broad across the shoulders. Salt and pepper beard, long hair pulled back, in a leather vest that displayed his allegiance in patches Marcus recognized immediately. Demon Riders. Vice President. You Marcus Chen? The man's voice was gravel rolling down a mountain. Heard of the best transmission guy in San Diego. Behind him, a custom van pulled into the parking lot. Black, expensive. The side door opened, and a wheelchair lift began to descend. And that's when Marcus saw her. Emma was 16 years old, though her eyes carried weariness that aged her beyond her years. Bright hazel eyes that missed nothing. Long brown hair in a casual ponytail. She wore a faded band t-shirt and jeans, but there was nothing normal about the wheelchair she sat in. The device looked like something designed by aerospace engineers. Sleek titanium frame, complex joint systems, LED panels. My daughter, the man said. Name's Blade. She needs work on her chair. Bearing's been squeaking. Marcus hesitated. I work on bikes and cars, not medical equipment. Blade stepped closer. You work on anything mechanical. Says so on your sign. Chen Auto Repair. We fix what others can't. Marcus's own words thrown back at him. He's not going to hurt you, Emma said, and there was the ghost of a smile on her face. This is Emma. The chair cost $40,000, built by specialists in Los Angeles. Top of the line, but it's squeaking. When I asked where to take it, 3 people mention your name. Marcus nodded slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. Bring her in. Let me take a look. Emma rolled forward, navigating the slight lip at the garage entrance with a jarring bump that made her wince. Just a small reaction, quickly hidden. But Marcus saw it. He saw everything. Marcus's eyes moved over the wheelchair with systematic precision. Weight distribution first, joint articulation second, stress points third. It took him less than a minute to understand something that made his stomach tighten. This isn't a mobility device, he thought. This is a cage. The wheelchair was beautiful, state-of-the-art, expensive, and fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. The weight distribution was backward. The battery pack sat too far forward, putting 45 pounds of pressure on Emma's lower back. Her spine was being forced into an unnatural curve just to balance the chair. The wheel alignment was off by degrees, so small most people wouldn't notice. But those degrees added up. Every time Emma moved, her body had to compensate. The joystick sensitivity was set so low that Emma had to push hard to get the chair to respond. Marcus could see the calluses on her right hand. How long you been using this chair? Marcus asked quietly. Emma tilted her head, surprised. 2 years. Since the accident. It hurt. Emma went very still. Yeah, my shoulders, my back. But they said it's the best money can buy. So, I figured it's just me. My body adjusting. Marcus looked up at her, and something in his chest cracked. She'd been in pain for 2 years, and thought it was her fault. Behind him, Blade's voice cut through the garage like a blade. Something you want to say, mechanic? Every survival instinct Marcus had screamed at him to shut up, to fix the squeak, to take the money and send them on their way. But Emma was looking at him now, and her eyes held desperate, fragile hope. Marcus had learned in the desert that sometimes the smallest mechanical flaw could mean the difference between life and death. He'd learned that staying silent when you saw a problem just meant someone else would pay the price for your cowardice. He stood slowly and looked directly at Blade. I can fix the squeak, but if you want, I could fix the real problem. The silence that followed was the kind you could cut with a knife. What problem? Blade finally asked. Marcus kept his voice calm. The chair's built wrong. Weight's backward, alignment's off, stress points torture her body. Whoever designed it focused on looking advanced, not on function. She's been in pain because the engineering is fundamentally flawed. Blade's entire body went rigid. Cost me 40 grand. Specialist from Los Angeles. Multiple engineers. Doctors signed off on it. And you're telling me they're all wrong? I'm saying they don't listen to machines the way a mechanic does. They design what looks impressive. I look at what works. And this doesn't work. Not for her. Blade took off his sunglasses slowly. His eyes were gray, hard as steel, and they pinned Marcus in place. You got some balls, mechanic. You're either the best I've ever met or you're running the stupidest con in history. I'm not conning anyone. I'm telling you what I see. Your daughter's been suffering for 2 years because nobody wanted to admit the emperor had no clothes. The chair's wrong. I can fix it, or you can take it somewhere else, and she can hurt for another 2 years. Emma leaned forward suddenly. You really think you can make it better? Marcus finally looked away from Blade and focused on her. I know I can. The garage went silent. Blade studied Marcus with the intensity of a man who'd spent his life reading people for lies. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Blade spoke. 24 hours. You rebuild that chair, you make it right. And if you're playing me, if you hurt my daughter, you'll answer to me and 94 of my brothers. He turned toward the door, gestured to Emma. Leave the chair. We'll pick you up. As Blade wheeled Emma toward the van, she looked back over her shoulder at Marcus. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for seeing me. Then they were gone. Marcus stood alone in his garage, looking at a $40,000 wheelchair he'd just promised to rebuild in 24 hours, knowing that if he was wrong, 95 demon riders would be coming for him at dawn. The garage door rolled shut with a metallic screech. Marcus stood alone now, the weight of his promise settling over him like a lead blanket. He started with complete disassembly. Every bolt, every joint, every electronic connection. He laid the components out on his workbench in systematic order. The battery pack, heavy and off balance, weighed 47 pounds, positioned exactly where it would cause maximum strain on Emma's lower back. As Marcus worked, his mind cataloged problems. The seat cushion compressed unevenly, creating pressure points. The footrests were mounted 2 inches too far forward, forcing Emma's knees into hyperextension. 6 o'clock came and went. The sun set over the California coast. 18 hours left. Around 8 p.m., while examining the seat assembly, Marcus's fingers brushed against something that didn't belong. Paper tucked deep inside the cushion. He pulled out carefully. The handwriting was young, feminine, careful. Someone please help. It hurts. For words. That was all. For words it said Emma had been screaming silently for 2 years and nobody had heard her. Marcus looked at the disassembled wheelchair, at Emma's hidden plea for help, at his own worn hands. This isn't about proving I'm right, he thought. This is about saving this girl from 2 more years of suffering. He picked up his wrench and got back to work. 11 p.m. hit Marcus like a physical weight. He'd been working for nearly 5 hours straight. Surrounded by wheelchair components and discarded designs, doubt crept in like poison. What if I'm wrong? He could see his ex-wife's face. Her words still cut deep. You always think you know better than everyone else, Marcus. One day it's going to cost you everything. His phone sat on the workbench, Blade's number programmed in. He could call right now, apologize, say he'd been hasty. Then his eyes landed on the note. Someone please help. It hurts. Marcus set the phone down. He stopped seeing the wheelchair as a medical device built by experts. He started seeing it as a prison, a cage constructed from good intentions and expensive materials and absolute certainty. But they hadn't asked Emma what she needed. They told her, and she'd suffered in silence. I've been wrong before, Marcus said out loud to the empty garage. But I'm not wrong about this. The clock showed midnight. 6.5 hours left. Marcus stood up and got back to work. 1 a.m. arrived with clarity that comes from pushing past exhaustion. Marcus had his plan now, complete. He rebuilt the frame extensions using reinforced aluminum, adjusting the mounting points so the wheels would track perfectly parallel. Now Emma's spine could sit naturally. The third modification came from an unexpected source. Marcus had a mountain bike hanging in the corner, a relic from better financial times. The bike had expensive micro-shock absorbers in the wheel hubs. He carefully removed them and adapted them to fit Emma's wheelchair wheels. It took 3 hours of machining custom mounting brackets. When he finished, the wheels had a float effect that would absorb bumps instead of transferring every shock directly into Emma's body. The fourth modification was the joystick. Marcus recalibrated the sensitivity, increasing it by 40%. Now it would respond to the lightest touch. Emma wouldn't have to strain anymore. The fifth modification was comfort engineering. He rebuilt the seat from scratch using memory foam layered with medical-grade gel packs. The foam would conform to Emma's body. The gel would prevent heat buildup. He repositioned the footrests based on Emma's actual measurements. 2 inches back, Such a small change that would save her knees from years of cumulative damage. 5:30 a.m. The sun was starting to paint the eastern sky. Marcus stepped back from the workbench and looked at what he'd created. The wheelchair looked different, sleeker, less like medical equipment, and more like a precision instrument built for a specific purpose. He tested every joint, every movement, every system. Everything flowed the way machinery should flow when it's built right. Marcus sat down against the wall, his body finally registering exhaustion. 24 hours ago, he'd been a broke mechanic fixing brake pads. Now he'd just rebuilt a $40,000 wheelchair in a way that would either prove him a genius or destroy him completely. The sun rose through the garage windows. 77 minutes until Blade and his brothers arrived. Marcus closed his eyes and whispered, "Please let this work." 6:30 a.m. Marcus cleaned up the garage with ritualistic precision. Tools went back in their designated places. He washed his hands, scrubbing away the grease and metal dust. He looked at himself in the cracked mirror. The man staring back looked 10 years older than he had yesterday morning. Then, cutting through the peaceful morning, Marcus heard it. The rumble. Distant at first, easy to mistake for thunder. But Marcus knew better. The first bike appeared around the corner, chrome glinting in the early morning sun. Then another, then 5 more, then 10. Marcus stopped counting at 30. They kept coming. An endless stream of Harleys. 95 motorcycles arranged in formation that suggested military precision. The sound of 95 engines was physical. Marcus could feel it in his chest, in his bones. Then one by one, the engines cut off, and the silence that followed was somehow more intimidating. Blade dismounted slowly, taking his time. His brothers parted as he walked through them, opening a path for their vice president. He stopped 10 feet from Marcus's garage entrance. "Where is it?" Blade asked. Marcus gestured to the wheelchair on his workbench. "I kept my promise." Blade walked forward, his brothers following. They crowded around the rebuilt wheelchair. Marcus could hear murmurs. "It's different. Lighter. Frame's been modified." Blade circled the wheelchair slowly, examining every detail. The carbon fiber panels, the adjusted wheelbase, the shock-absorbed wheels, the rebuilt seat. He spent 5 full minutes on his inspection, and Marcus barely breathed the entire time. Finally, Blade straightened up and looked directly at Marcus. "Talk me through it." Marcus explained each modification, each decision, why he'd made the changes he'd made. He used simple language, showing respect for their intelligence. Some of the bikers nodded along. Others asked technical questions. A few remained stone-faced, reserving judgment. When Marcus finished, the silence returned. Blade studied the wheelchair for another long moment. Then he removed his sunglasses slowly, and Marcus saw that his eyes were wet. Not crying, just the sheen of emotion barely held in check. "Emma's in the van," Blade said, his voice rougher than before. "Let's see if you're a genius or a dead man." The van door opened with a hydraulic hiss, and Emma appeared in the entrance. She wore the same band t-shirt from yesterday, but her face carried an expression Marcus had seen before in Iraq. The look of someone who'd learned not to hope too much because hope hurt when it died. Blade moved to help her, and for a moment, the dangerous biker disappeared completely. This was just a father helping his daughter. Emma settled into the rebuilt wheelchair. This was the moment. Emma's eyes widened immediately. Her hands gripped the armrests, feeling their new position. Her feet settled onto the properly positioned footrests. Her back straightened naturally. "It's lighter," she said, wonder filling her voice. "It's so much lighter." She reached for the joystick, touched it with just her fingertips. The wheelchair responded instantly, rolling forward smoothly. Emma's face transformed. The guarded expression cracked, and underneath was pure, unbridled joy. She moved forward, testing the chair's response, then turned, then moved again. The bikers watched in absolute silence as Emma navigated the parking lot. She rolled over a crack in the pavement, the kind that used to jar her spine, and the shock absorbers absorbed the impact so smoothly she barely felt it. Tears started forming in her eyes, but she was smiling. She did a full circle around the parking lot, then another, faster now, more confident. The bikers remained silent. watching this miracle unfold. Hard men who'd seen violence moved to tears by a teenage girl remembering what freedom felt like.